we have taken the first section of the book, Hawal Ahwal Nabawiyah, right, of the states of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right, by Al Habib Muhammad bin Ali al Malik al Hasani. We taken the first section, right, that speaks about the states of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and what is connected to his essence Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and matters about him and his family as well. Inshallah, from today onwards, we're going to go to the second half of the book, right? And the second part of the book speaks about the most important events that happened in the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this one will be more of stories, right? More of stories in the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We're going to go more into the biography of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We're going to begin from the first year, of the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is exactly the biography of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The first half was just matters about Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Second half of the book is about the entire biography of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam from his birth Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to the end of his life, 63, at the point of his age being 63. So if the page can be shared, inshallah. Right, so the first year of the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So in the first year of life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Sayyidah Halim al-Sa'diyah came to Mecca and took him to Bani Sa'ad. As we know, the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, at the birth of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it happened at a time whereby there was a culture in Mecca, like whereby they would hire, or they would pay wet nurses try to take their children up to the mountains to be breastfed and to have the health of the mountains, of the air of the mountains, right? And they'll pay them an amount, right? So it's like it is a job that the Bedouins of the mountains will give, a service they will give to people of Mecca. Right, so that year, that particular year, it was a very poor year, right? There was no rain, there was a drought that was happening, right? That they were suffering, a lot. The entire village was suffering. Instead of Halimah Sa'diyah, she had come late, because of a weak donkey and her weak animals, right? And that all the other women had preceded her in coming to Mecca, and they had taken all the other babies who were born that year, right? And had left Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was an orphan, right? So mashallah. Right, and so she had no choice except to take Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because she didn't want to leave Mecca without a baby. Can the page be shared? Can someone share the page? Right, so when she left Mecca with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there was a miracle that happened to her. That happened to her, that her donkey gained in energy and strength, to the point that the woman would say, Halima, is it the same donkey you came with? And she said, yes, it's the same donkey that I came with. And there were many, many miracles that happened around Sayyidah Halima Sa'diyah, which we mentioned later on. The second year, after in the second year in the life of Rasulullah SAW was the birth of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, like, he is about 2 years, younger than Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Right. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is older, right? Then Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Sayyidina Abu Siddiq is younger by about 2 years, right, from Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Right. So and he's been played, and they were friends since a very young age, right? And Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, he remained a close friend to Rasulullah from a very young age, like all the way till their adulthood, until Rasulullah became a prophet. And he was the one that would accompany Rasulullah in his hijrah, in his migration. The best friend, the closest friend to Rasulullah, and then up to the death of Rasulullah, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, he took the Khilafah, he took the caliphate after Rasulullah, like, for about 2.5 years. And then he passed away, and he passed away exactly at 63 years, the same like Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this is the second year after the birth of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Sayyidina Abu Bakr was born. Right, the third year, the third year of the life, or the fourth year of life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, happened the incident, of the splitting of the chest of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. When he was in Halim Sa'diyah, he was 3 or 4 years old. Right, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he was Sayyidina Halimah Sa'diyah. Right, it was said, and it is a difference of opinion. There was 3, 4, 5 years. He was with Halimah Sa'diyah, and his chest was split by the angels, right, and his heart was washed. It was the first time his heart was washed, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. and Sayyidah Halimatu Sa'diyah, she got scared of what happened to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and she rushed back to return Rasulullah to his mother, because she was afraid that something happened, right, to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam from that incident, right now. Right, so in his 6th year, of life, he was 6 years old, he went to Medina, right, to visit, his mother's side from his father, because Sayyidina Abdullah had relatives in Medina, right, in Yathrib. At that time it was called Yathrib, right, from his grandmother's side, right, from Salma, his grandmother, right. So they had relatives from the mother side, right. So they were gone to Medina to visit, or Yathrib, to visit his grandmother's side, and also to visit his father's grave. And on the way back, right, his mother passed away. He was only 6 years old, as we know. And his and the slave girl, that belonged to Abdullah, Sayyidina Abdullah, that became an inheritance to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Sayyidah Barakah. She was the one who brought Rasulullah back to Medina, up onto Mecca, after his mother passed away at Abwa, in between Mecca and Medina, and placed him in the custody of his grandfather Abdul Muttalib. His grandfather passed away when he was 8 years old, right? And then, right, and then when he was 12 years, when he was around 12 years old, his uncle brought him to Basra, where the story of Buhaira the monk, happened, right? And in the 13th year, of Rasul's life, right, Sayyidina Omar was born. Sayyidina Omar is actually 13 years younger than Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. When he was 13 years old, Sayyidina Omar was born, right? Sayyidina Omar was born. Can the pages be shared, please? It will help me in translation. Can someone share the pages? Right. Now, right. So it is said that Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab, right? He was basically born 13 years after Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? And then he took the caliphate after Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and he was killed by Abu Lu'lu'ah, right, who was a Magian, a fire worshipper. After he was killed, but he was killed in that way, right? Sayyidina Umar, right, where he passed away as well at 63 years old, same like Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. All of them, they passed away at 63 years old, all of them. Now, and in the 14th year, right, and so of course, when you say so all this happened, right, before Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was raised to be a prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, before revelation came to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right. So there was a war that happened between Kinana and Abu Qais, right, and this war was called the War of the Fujjar, because it happened in the sacred months. Because it was in the time of, especially in Jahiliyyah, in pre-Islamic time, right, that the sacred months, it's not permissible for people to fight, like for the tribes to fight. So basically, a man had taken, right, he had taken a caravan, and he had basically hijacked a caravan that had some perfume that was carrying, right, and killed the person who was bringing the caravan, right. So it was a war that began, right. It happened in the time of in one of the months, one of the secret months. So Rasulullah, he was 14 years old at the time when this happened. It was a major event that happened amongst the Arabs, right. Then in this time, when he was 14 years old, right, there was this war, this battle happened, and there was also a Hilf Fudul. Right, basically what this is about is it was like a group of young people that they come together, right, and they came together and they came together, right, and they made a pact, right, whereby they promised, right, they promised to support and to protect any foreigners that came into Mecca, right, to protect them from any form of injustice, right, because what happened in this situation was that there was a foreigner that came into Mecca, and he was cheated. By, I think it was by Abu Jahl, right? So when this happened, this foreigner went to the Kaaba, and he shouted out to the people of Mecca, "Is this how you treat foreigners? That they have no tribe, they came as foreigners, and therefore you cheat them." Right, and so the people of Mecca, the righteous people of Mecca, came together, right, and they took a pact, made a group together, right, whereby they would support and protect, right, any foreigner that came to Mecca, to protect the rights of foreigners. And Rasulullah would say thereafter, he will say thereafter that I was involved in the pact, or in an agreement before Islam, right, where we would support like the weak and the weak and the abused. And he said that if I was called to it again in Islam, I would respond to it. That means showing the sunnah, right, to support truth and justice wherever it is, whether it's with the believers or disbelievers. Like wherever there is truth and justice, you support it, right? It's called the pact of Fudul because many of the people who were involved in this pact, their name was Fadl. Mm. Now, now, right? So she's bringing the story right now, right, about what happened to this foreigner that came to Mecca. He went around the Kaaba and he was saying these lines of poetry, saying to people of Mecca, "What kind of nobility is this? I came to your land to do some trading, and this is how you treat me in injustice." Right? So he went in lines of poetry, like saying that. Mm, right. So now we're not we're in the second half. In the second half, not here. We're in the second half. Mm. All right. All this is finished. Mm. Right. So Rasulullah SAW, he said about this Hiful Fudul, right? For this so he said that I would not replace this pact that I was involved in from before revelation. Even if people would give me red camels, I would have participated in this pact, right? Showing that Muslims will always stand with justice wherever justice lies. Now, right, so in this year, Rasulullah, so the 25th year of his life, so he said here that if I were to ever, if I entered in Ibn Jaddan's house, he said I would not wish to have a herd of red camels in exchange for a treaty that I attended in Ibn Jaddan's house. If I was ever invited again to it, the treaty that I would really accept. And the 25th year, right, he went to Sham again with Maisara, who is a slave boy of Sayyidah Khadija, on business, and then he married her in the very same year. In the 30th year, Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib, he was born in Kaaba. Right, so Sayyidina Ali, he is a cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, he is so Sayyidina Ali, he is of the first of the children who came into Islam. Right, and he was so basically he was born 10 years before Rasulullah received revelation. He was 10 years when the revelation came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, and he was always with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and never separated from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he witnessed so many of the events that happened to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that when Sayyidina Ali came to Medina, and he came late because he was told to look after the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to escort them to Medina during the hijrah, during the migration. So when he came late, he had no brother because Rasulullah was pairing up the Muslims as brothers to each other, fillah. And so he came, he had no pair. And Rasulullah said, Sayyidina Ali, you are my brother. You are my brother by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Sayyidina Ali, he was martyred when he was 3 years old, right, in the year 40 after Hijrah. Right. So right. So he said Sayyidina Ali, like he was murdered, or he was assassinated on his way to the Fajr prayer. Right. So in the 34th year, Sayyidina Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan and Muaz bin Jabal, they were born. Right. So now the ages of the seven Sahaba. In the year 2035, reports of his eminence became well known. People who had knowledge. This was a year whereby Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra was born as well. Right, Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra was only 5 years old when Rasulullah first received revelation. Right, so reports of the eminence of Rasulullah became well known in the 35th year of his life. Right, it was 5 years before he received revelation that signs began to appear that the Prophet was about to emerge. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this year, Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra was born. In this very year also, the Quraysh demolished the Kaaba and rebuilt it new. And they appointed Rasulullah as the one, right, to be the arbitrator in deciding who to put the black stone back in its place. Right, so he was made to be the judge, right, and therefore he judged between them, with pleasure and justice, and he ordered, right, to spread his upper garment and he placed a stone on it. Then for 4 of the chiefs, of the tribes to carry it from the corners, then he took it with his noble hand and put it in this place. So it was him, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who placed the stone back in its place, right? Right. So now, right. So because the Kaaba there was a fire that happened, and there was a flood that happened from before that. They caused the Kaaba to fall. Of course, for the Kaaba to be damaged, severely damaged, and there were parts of the wall that was collapsing. Right. So they had to bring the Kaaba back down to its foundations and then rebuild it, right, for it to stand. Now, right. So this happened in the day. It happened at the same day that this happened. It was the day that Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra was born. Um, on 20th of Jumadul Thaniya, 35 years of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, and you see a similarity between Rasulullah and Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra, right? That for Rasulullah on the year that he was born, there was a major event to do with the Kaaba, which was the destruction of the army of Abraha. That was to destroy the Kaaba. And Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra, the year that she was born, there was also a major event to do with the Kaaba, which was the rebuilding of the Kaaba. Right. So for both of them, they have a similarity between them in that the year that they were born, there was a major event that had to do with the Kaaba. Right. So and in fact, these people, when they had decided, right, when they had decided to bring down the Kaaba and to rebuild the Kaaba, right, and then they came to the point where they had to put the black stone back in its spot, right? They were about to fight each other with swords, right, as to who had the right to or had the honor to put the black stone in, right? And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So eventually, one of them said, it was Walid bin Mughira. He said that, "Alas, we're not going to fight, but the first person to enter into the masjid tomorrow morning, right, that he will be the one to decide who will put the stone back." And it was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were pleased with it. In the 38th year, the irhasat are miracles that happened before prophethood. They're called irhasat. So they are they are basically extraordinary events, right? Extraordinary events that happen like for prophets, like before they reach prophethood. So they are not called mu'jizat, but they called irhasat. Right, to show so Rasulullah said that so Rasulullah, and so in fact Rasulullah said that the miracles of prophets have ended, but mubashirat have occurred, which means true dreams, right? True dreams by a believer, and the more truthful a person is in speech, the more truthful their dreams. Right. So then comes so all these dreams is to give good news to believers towards the end of times, right? To keep them firm on the straight path. Now, right, and so indicating its eminence, it began to manifest. He would see bright lights and hear sounds without witnessing anybody, and he began to isolate himself in the cave of Hira. Right, so he would go to the cave of Hira, and he would think, he would ponder, he would do a lot of khalwa. He would be alone and in isolation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in worship. This is what he was doing, right? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the 40th year, the trustworthy angel Jibril came to him with the message of the glorious King of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. According to what's been narrated, this happened and began. This began. His prophet began on a Monday. It came to him on a Monday, right? So on the 17th of Ramadan, as we know. Right, so this is the 40th year, right? So of the people who came into Islam was Sayyidina Khadija, and was the first president in Islam. Then you have Sayyidina Ali, the first boy, or the first child. Then Sayyidina Zayd, the first Mawla, and the first freed slave. Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the first man to come into Islam. So this is the first year of prophethood. So now we're going to count from the years of prophethood. So previously we count from the years of birth of Rasulullah. Now we're going to count from the year of prophethood. So in the for the first 3 years of prophethood, that he was doing his da'wah in secrecy. Right, then comes the third year of prophethood, whereby Allah announced Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to proclaim openly what you have been commanded to convey and ignore the policies, turn away from the policies. Right. So for the first 3 years, it was in secrecy, right? The da'wah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's a lot of wisdom as to why Rasulullah he maintained the da'wah in secrecy for the first 3 years, right? Then when the revelation first came, right? And so Rasulullah when he began when he began to when Allah commanded him to do the da'wah in the open, right? And he began to say it in the open, right? When at first he was okay, people were not really having been bothered by what he was saying, but the moment he began to say against about the falsehood of the angels, that was when people began to began to fight against him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So some initially invited people to Islam. They neither shunned him nor rebuffed him because he was someone who was honored and respected in Mecca, until he began to mention and criticize their gods, their idols. Right? Then they began to get defensive and began to be abusive towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Talib, the uncle of Rasulullah, took care of him, and so the matter was not fraught with danger because he had protection from his tribe. And nevertheless, did begin to ostracize others who came into Islam. Right. So right, so they began to torture, they began to abuse the Muslims. Anyone who followed Rasulullah, they were abused. Right, to stop them from following Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quraysh conspired against those who stood Islam, torturing and persecuting them because of their religion. There was an occasion during this period where Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas was in a group of people praying in one of the mountain trails. And people of polytheists suddenly surrounded them as they prayed and began to criticize them. They began to mock them and criticize them of what they were doing, right? Until a fight broke out. Thereupon Sa'ad struck one of the polytheists, right, that came in a jawbone, causing a head injury. This was the first blood that was spilled in Islam, right? Because he fought them. Right. So these people, right, they right. So the first person to actually spill blood, right, for the sake of Islam, was Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas, right? Right, whereby he took the muzzle, like the muzzle of one of the camels, right, and he struck the disbeliever, and he caused for the disbeliever to have an injury, right, in his face. Right. So but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always protected Rasulullah by the way of his uncle Abu Talib and the Bani Hashim. Bani Hashim, except for Abu Lahab, if the exception of Abu Lahab, right, and Bani Muttalib. So Bani Hashim, right, they would protect Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right. So Walid bin Mughira began to accuse Rasulullah of sorcery, of being a magician, right? It is mentioned in the Quran of how he plotted, right, to what to say about Rasulullah to stop people from believing, not believe in him. So his class and follow him in that. So then the words were revealed regarding Walid bin Mughira, where Allah says, "Leave me." Right, to deal with Walid bin Mughira, right, and he's the one that Allah has created by himself, and Allah will handle Walid bin Mughira in his plots and his plans, right, against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his slander against Rasulullah next speech, right. So the one that and regarding the group that follow him in their behavior, that those who have divided the Quran, claiming some of it is lies and some are fairy tales and so forth, the Quran calls them out on it. So here, this is the third year of prophethood, right? The year whereby he was ordered or commanded to be out to call people to Islam, in open. In the fifth year after prophethood, Sayyidina Aisha was born, and the first migration to Abyssinia took place. Initially, it was 11 men and 4 women. Currently departed, amongst them was Uthman bin Affan and his wife Sayyidah Ruqayya, the daughter of Rasulullah, and Salama, who later became the mother of the believers, and Uthman bin Maz'un, who was to lead them. And thereafter, Ja'far bin Abi Talib left, and the Muslims began to leave until they reached 82 men, excluding women and children in total. So in that year also, Sayyidah Sumayyah, she passed away. She was the first one to be martyred in Islam, was the woman, right? So in the 6th year after prophethood, right? So basically, one before this, right? So in this year there were 11 men who went to Habsha, right? And there were 4 women that went to Habsha, right? So amongst them was Sayyidina Uthman and Sayyidina Ruqayya, right? And Sayyidina Salama, right? Who was amongst them as well, right? And Sayyidina Uthman bin Maz'un. Sayyidina Uthman bin Maz'un, he is the brother of Rasulullah from wet nursing, and he was very beloved to Rasulullah. Right, that was when he was martyred in the Battle of Uhud. Rasulullah took a stone and placed on the grave of Sayyidina Uthman bin Maz'un, and he said that this is a grave of my brother in wet nursing. So he placed a stone there to mark the grave. From there is the permissibility of placing stones on graves, like to mark graves, so you know who is buried where, right? Right. So Sayyidina Ja'far bin Abu Talib, right? He also left for the Hijrah in this year, and the Muslims began to leave. Um, mm. Mm. And Sayyidina Ja'far bin Abi Talib, when he went to the Abyssinia, right, it was from Ja'far, who was so eloquent in how he delivered the message to the Najashi, right? And there was a discussion between them, as to what Rasulullah had brought. It was from the eloquence of da'wah of Sayyidina Ja'far, who was a cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Najashi came into Islam eventually, right? So they were treated honorably by the Najashi, the Negus. Afterwards, some of them returned to Mecca, while those who remain did so until Rasulullah migrated to Medina, whereupon they went to Medina with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Sayyidah Sumayyah, the whole family, Sayyidah Sumayyah, Amir, Sayyidina Ammar, and Yasir, and they were all his parents, Sayyidina Sumayyah and Sayyidina Yasir, they were martyred. And the first to be martyred was Sayyidina Sumayyah by Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl killed her. So in the 6th year of the Prophethood, his uncle Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib accepted Islam, alhamdulillah, and he was the strongest and the most valiant youth amongst the Quraysh, and thus Rasulullah was strengthened by him as Quraysh, as Quraysh to some extent. They were fearful of Sayyidina Hamza, and so they did not harm Rasulullah because Sayyidina Hamza was a Muslim. Then Allah ordered Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab to accept Islam 3 days, only in the same week, only 3 days after Sayyidina Hamza came into Islam. As a result of Rasul's prayer, oh Allah, guide one of the two Umars to Islam. And he meant Umar, meaning Amr bin Hisham, who is Abu Jahl, and Umar bin al-Khattab. All right. Sayyidina Umar, he was in the book of Hikam, it was mentioned that Sayyidina Umar, he was one of the strong, very firm men, right? Among the disbelievers at that time. So, and he said that as when Sayyidina Umar came into Islam, right? Ibn Mas'ud used to say that we were unable to pray by the Kaaba. Umar to Islam, then we could go to the Kaaba to pray. Right. So Rasulullah SAW, so it is also mentioned that there were times where Rasulullah would dua just for Sayyidina Umar to come into Islam. So he is the answered dua of Rasulullah SAW. In the 7th year of the Prophethood, the Quraysh got together and pledged to collectively sever ties with Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib by boycotting them in regards to buying, selling, and marriage and so forth. Right. So they really wanted to stop Rasulullah SAW, and took this last way to stop him. So they wrote such terms of the boycott, was a very cruel boycott, on a piece of paper with Mansur bin Ikrimah's handwriting. Consequently, his hand became paralyzed by doing that. He became paralyzed. Allah punished him, right? And he was hung inside the Kaaba. With the ratification of the boycott, Bani Hashim, Bani Muttalib were marginalized to the mountain trail of Abu Talib, and the Muslims endured such suffering in these years of the blockade. It continued for almost 3 years until they were so exhausted and nothing would reach them except covertly, as a very, very little will come to them. Right. So it was one of the most difficult years in the mission of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would not buy, they would not sell, they would not marry, they would not, do anything with Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib, like the two tribes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And to the point they were marginalized, they were ostracized, they were expelled, right, from Mecca into the Bani Sham of Abu Talib, right, the entire the valley that belongs to Abu Talib. They were all banished to this area. It lasted for about 3 years, and it was very difficult, right, on the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the tribes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, and they used to eat, from dry leaves, right, and they used that their defecation would be the defecation of goats, because they ate so much dry leaves that they would defecate like goats, in their stool, right, in that way, right. So it was very difficult on them, these 3 years of boycott. And then a group of 5 chieftains from the Quraysh, who were disbelievers. They were disbelievers, but they came together, and they made an agreement to stop the treaty and to abolish it, right? Because it was a cruel treaty. So even the disbelievers could see, right, that it was that this treaty, it would that it was, that it should not continue because it was just cruel. It was a very cruel treaty that they had imposed upon Bani Hashim, Bani Muttalib. Um, mm. And so to the point that some of them, they would eat the most difficult things. So actually the entire boycott was brought to an end, because Allah had sent some termites to eat the paper that the boycott terms were written on, and it left only the words Bismillah Allahumma, like the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by this, right, the entire boycott was abolished, was removed, right. Mm. Okay, so this year the Battle of Bu'as happens all from Allah's planning, right? Whereby it was the name of a fortress belonging to the Aus. This huge battle happened between the Aus and the Khazraj, right? So so basically there was a man that was killed. Right, his was called Khalif bin from the Khazraj. Right, so that this caused for a huge war to happen in the Aus and the Khazraj, and in this huge war, the main chiefs of the Aus and the Khazraj, they were all slaughtered in this war. This actually prepared the people of Medina, right, to accept Rasulullah as a leader, right, because they're big, they're their main leaders, like all the elders, right? The elders are usually the ones who resist the message, right? The young ones are the ones who usually accept the message. The elders are the ones who are resisting. So this huge battle of Bu'ath, that was what caused for a lot of the elders, right, to be slaughtered, right, in this battle, and it opened up, Medina to accept Rasulullah. In the 8th year of prophethood, the chapter of the Romans was revealed. The Surah Rum was revealed. The reason behind its revelation was that there was an ongoing war between the Persians and the Romans, who were the two superpowers of the world at the time. Like, and the polytheists had wanted the Persians to win because the Persians were also polytheists, and that the Romans were Ahl Kitab, and the Romans were actually Christians, so they were Ahl Kitab. So the polytheists were rooting, right, for the Persians, because they were the same. They were all idol worshippers, and the Muslims were rooting for the Romans because the Romans were Ahlul Kitab, right? So they were not polytheists, but they were Ahlul Kitab, right? So the Persians won at first, right? But then the verse came down, and the verse in Surah Rum revealed that the Romans will win thereafter, right? Yes, the Persians won at first, but thereafter the Romans will defeat the Persians soon, right? It was revealed in that way, showing something that will happen in the future, which is a sign or proof of the truthfulness of the Quran, that was in Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. In the 9th year of prophethood, all right, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his family came up from the Bucket of the mountain trail, and the treaty of the Bucket was abolished. Mm. Right, and then the moon was split in this year, the 9th year of prophethood. I was in front of him, because they had said to Rasulullah, "O Muhammad, if you truly indeed you are a prophet, I then split this moon that is in front of us." Right, so Rasulullah he pointed at, so Rasulullah said to them, "If I split the moon, will you believe?" And they promised, "Yes, if you can split the moon, we will believe." Right, and so he pointed to the moon, and the moon split physically. It physically split into two, right, in front of them, right? But they refused to believe in Rasulullah. This was less a miracle that was exclusively for Rasulullah, and no one else amongst the prophets ever did this. Right? It was only specially for Rasulullah. In the 10th year after prophet, when Rustam was 50 years old, Abu Talib passed away. Then Sayyidah Khadija this was soon after the release from the boycott. The notes are not going to be given out, because this is a book you can purchase. You can actually purchase this book. I encourage you to purchase the book. The PDF and the notes will not be given out because they are copyrighted, right? And you can actually purchase the book. Abu Talib passed away, then Sayyidah Khadija then passed away 3 days after Abu Talib. Such was the sorrow of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the deepening sorrow of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He called this year the year of grief, Amul Huzn, and the year of grief. He married Sayyidah Sauda binti Zam'a, and that was his second wife after Sayyidah Khadija. And he, consummated the marriage in Mecca, and he was alone with her for about 3 years. Sayyidah Sauda binti Zam'a. Right, and then it was in the same year he had a contracted marriage to the Aisha, but had not consummated the marriage until they went to Medina thereafter. Right, so Rasulullah he went alone to Saqif, right, the people of Ta'if, right, to da'wah to them. because the da'wah in Mecca was really, it had reached, like, like rock bottom. So he went to Ta'if, right? And he stayed there for about a month. And so because in Mecca it has become so bleak, the situation, and that he had lost his uncle and his wife, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And that the people are plotting to assassinate him. And so when he lost his beloved uncle, the one who raised him, right, the one who supported him, the one who by the name of his uncle, the Quraysh did not touch Rasulullah out of their respect for Abu Talib, right? So Rasulullah, he spent about 10 years. He was in Mecca calling them to Islam, and he didn't respond to him. Only very few actually came into Islam, very, very few after 10 years. So he said, no, khalas, the people of Mecca are not responding, right? So, and he has spent 10 years calling them and they were not responding. So he went to the second largest town, like in the peninsula at that time. That was Ta'if, right? Thaqif, right? Thaqif, the people are called Thaqif. The town is called Ta'if. Alright, so he went there. So he went to the people and he met the three brothers who were the three leaders who were all brothers, and they made fun of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, these three. And one of them said, why would we follow you when your own people didn't obey you or didn't follow you? And the second one said, if you were already a prophet, then then he said that didn't Allah find anyone better, right, than you to send as a prophet? And the third one said, if you're already a prophet, I won't speak to you. If you're not already a prophet, I won't speak to you as well because you're a liar. Right. So they all made fun of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was severely hurt and he encountered unbearable criticism and condemnation and mockery. Right. Um mm, mm. Right. So uh um right. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though you say we call this year the year of grief, don't misunderstand this to mean that Rasulullah was in some form of depression or whatsoever. No, like he was still doing his job as a prophet. He was still putting his effort. He was still living and the life that Allah has given him, right, in full, energy and zeal and determination. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, sadness occurs to human beings, right? But he still did his job. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But how we know when he lost his final son, Sayyidina Ibrahim bin Muhammad, Sayyidina Ibrahim, when he passed away, Rasulullah, he still went out to the people to correct them when they were saying, oh, the sun eclipse, out of sadness to the death of the son of the Prophet. He corrected them, the sun and the moon, they only obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They do not, eclipse for the death of any person or the birth of any person. Now, next page. Right. So then came the 11th year of Hijrah, and so Rasulullah he would go. So every year during the Hajj season or the pilgrimage season, Rasulullah he would go out to the people who came to Mecca for Hajj, and he would present himself to the tribes, to random strangers. He would present himself like as the prophet of Allah, the last prophet, and he would call them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. So he would go to these people. Right. So every year he would do this from the first year of revelation. He would do this every single year during the Hajj season to try and get people to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this particular year, in the 11th year, the Ansar came. And the Ansar came, and it was the first time the Ansar had met Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Medina, right? And they accepted Islam, and from amongst them, 6 individuals from the Khazraj at Al-Aqaba who believed in him. In the same year, there was a group of jinn from Nusaybin, or from Sham, and his jinn knew about the prophets, and they were believers in the book, right? So they visited Rasulullah. There were 9 of these jinn, and they believed him. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah mentions about them, right, in Surah Jinn, where Allah says, when a group of jinn heard you, O Prophet, or we send a group of jinn to you, O Prophet. Right? So we know Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Mm. Mm. Right. So Rasulullah, when he knew of this group of jinn that had come from this place on the earth at Sham, at Syria, right? Rasulullah, he made dua that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always increase his light, and may Allah increase his water, the water in this place, and give it security. Right. So he made dua for this place specifically. Right. So it was basically, it happened, it is mentioned that Rasulullah, when he fled from Ta'if, and he was praying to the rak'ats, and he was reciting the Quran, and this group of jinn this group of jinn heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recite this now this recite this verses of the Quran, and the jinn came into Islam. Thereafter, Rasulullah will have his his halaqas or his lessons with the jinn. There was once a jinn came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they asked Rasulullah, and they were Muslims, right? They were Muslim jinn. So what is halal for us, right? And the jinn would say, and Rasulullah he said that whatever is Allah's name is said, whatever Allah's name is said on, then that is halal for you. Right? So it is that when you throw out food to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, like the bones of the food are the bones are the food of the jinn. Right? So you say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, there'll be the Muslim jinns that will consume it. If you don't say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, you throw out food, then the kafir jinn will be the ones who will eat it. Right? Mm. Right, so on the 12th year after prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah was taken on night journey, Isra and Mi'raj from Mecca to Jerusalem, right, and thereafter he ascended in the Mi'raj right from Jerusalem to the highest heavens, right, to up to what only Allah knows, and many of the companions affirm that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw Allah subhanahu wa taala in whatever that means, right, and that was during Isra and Mi'raj, right. So we know that Isra is Rasulullah going from Mecca, right, to Baitul Maqdis, and then Isra is from Baitul Maqdis up to the seven heavens, right, wherever he went, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so he was brought, and he was given the five prayers as a commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mm. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, that indeed Rasul did not lie, nor did his eyes deceive him, but he saw from the great signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Allah gave him 50 prayers to do initially, right, Sayyidina Musa, Rasulullah to ask for less, ask for less, until it became to 5 prayers. Right, so 5 prayers, and each of these prayers are equals to 10, and eventually it's equals to 50. Right, 50 prayers altogether. Right, so in the 13th year after, so then thereafter, he met, a second pledge of allegiance, one at Aqaba, where he met 12 men from the people of Medina, and his pledge allegiance to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the 13th year, there's a final year before he made the migration to Medina, right? A second pledge of Aqaba was done with the Ansar. So the third pledge was done, right? And can you scroll up? Not yet. Right. So and the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam met 73 men and 2 women from the Aus and the Khazraj, from whom he took the pledge of allegiance, and appointed 12, like Naqib. Naqib will be supervised over them. Right. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he arranged the matter, he planned the matter out. Right. He sent Sayyidina Mus'ab bin Amir, right, to Medina to call the people to Islam, to teach people Islam, so that the majority of the people in Medina will be Muslim before the coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Medina. Right, so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he arranged the matter, right, for the religion to be spread to Medina, and to spread the Quran to Medina in this time. And so we have finished the first 3 years, first half, very quickly, the first half of Rasulullah's life, right, from his birth, right, to right before he migrated to Medina. Right, inshallah, the second half, right, we will go into very quickly, very briefly, right, from the 14th year, right, of his revelation, right, of Rasulullah to him up till the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so from his first year to his 40th year, so in the 40th year, that was when he received revelation for the first time. Then up till the 13th year, right, upon 13th year after revelation, whereby he was in Mecca. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala migrated to Medina, right, may Allah make this majlis approved for us and not against us. Right now she's asking if you all have any questions. Anybody any questions, you can ask your questions, inshallah. Inshallah. I hope that it was clear. Is this a summary? It's a summary. Inshallah. And release me from translation, inshallah. جزاكم الله خير أستاذة إن شاء الله. الحمد لله. سأسألهم هل عندهم أي سؤال أسئلة, any questions or even previous questions that we have not responded to. Anyone has any questions about the first 13 years of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Bismillah. Any previous questions from the previous lessons? There are no questions. Are there any questions from the last lessons, the previous lessons? نعم يعني نعرف أن السيرة يعني مهم جدا يعني خصوصا في زمننا يعني حتى يعني نعرف أن في تحولات القراءة الاستدلالية صح
نعم
وأيضا سنة المواقف يعني كل هذا يعني
نعم
نحتاج أن ندرس السيرة بعمقها يعني نعرف سيرة يعني خصوصا حتى يعني نعرف المعلومات ثم نعرف المواقف يعني في زمن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم
نعم
ف
نعم
يعني يعني ما نصيحتكم يعني إذا واحدة هنا يعني هي الآن هي تبدأ بدراسة السيرة يعني ما نصيحتكم لها يعني أن هي تركز على أي شيء يعني في السيرة أو حتى يعني إذا هي تعلم يعني أولادها عيالها يعني سيرة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعني كيف يعني كما التوجيه يعني أو يعني كيف تمام. So she said that, alhamdulillah, she said that. So basically, so my question was, right, especially, in living the end of times, that to learn about the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is very important, right? Because especially, we look into his life to see points of, his interaction, his responses, lessons, principles that we extract from his life. His life is a blueprint for the rest of humanity till the end of times. So it is very important for us to study the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that way. So I asked her to give us some advice, give us some advice on how we can embark on this, on how we can understand his life, clearly and deeply and properly, right, and to extract the lessons from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So she said that, mashallah, it is a very important matter, right, to really truly deeply internalize the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is crucial, especially in our time. And she mentioned that, regards to, so first and foremost, the five matters, the five aspects, of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you mentioned in the first lesson, and we just mentioned today itself, right, to actually focus on them, right, of the proofs of prophethood, of the facts, of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of what is special on him, of his miracles, and then also of his life, of his biography. And then she said that then you teach your children, or your students who are around you, you teach them, with regards to what is suited, right, for their state or for their stage in life. And so of course for younger children, when you go into stories, you speak about the animals around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you speak about, his interactions, small stories here and there, right, to gain their, interest in their love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in fact, and also to actually, teach them as well, about the battles that happened, amongst between the Muslims as the Sahaba, the companions used to say that we used to teach our children about the battles, I tell them about the battles that happened, right, between the Muslims and the disbelievers, as how they would teach their children a surah from the Quran, mashallah. And so don't shy away from battles, don't shy away from these events that happen, to the Muslims, are all events that happen in history. I teach them, right? Because if you don't teach them, they're gonna hear from somebody else who might slander the Muslim or slander the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you be the first to teach them, all of these facts, these matters, right? And as they grow older, become teenagers, you go into deeper meanings, deeper, values, deeper lessons, right, in the story of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She mentioned that, right? And so and so forth, and so this is how you would, carry these lessons, about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so there should be a focus, right, in doing it in this way. Okay, we have 5 more minutes. Let me just see a question here. Here سألت هناك سؤالين. السؤال الأول, we only have 5 more minutes. So because I have to go off to the next class. هناك سؤال, هي سألت يعني هل هناك أي قصة يعني مهمة التي يعني غير موجودة في كتب السيرة، يعني يمكن يعني لازم نعرفها، أو كل شيء في كتب السيرة. والسؤال السؤال الثاني هي قالت هي سمعت أن في زمان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هناك كثير من يزعمون أنهم مسلمون بس هم يعني المنافقون. نعم صحيح، كثير منافقون. فكيف رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يعامل مع المنافقين هؤلاء؟ هل هو يعني يقاتلهم مباشرة أو فعل أي شيء؟ هناك موقف، صح؟ مواقف. ما شاء الله، جميل الفكرة، ما شاء الله. تمام. So she gave, homework for you and your children. So she said that, so the first thing first, the question about the stories that was sent to me privately, so you all didn't see the question. Next time, send questions on in public, please, so that people can see the questions. Right, so the question was sent to me privately. She said that, are there any stories that we should know about in the Sirah that is not mentioned in the books, right? And so I said that mainly the stories in Sirah are mentioned in the Quran, in the Hadith of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and to be careful, about the stories, whether they are true or not. I so to take them, directly from sources that are reliable. So a lot of them are already mentioned. In fact, that the Quran was sent down with regards to the events that happened in the time of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a proof in itself, right? So it was sent down, to respond, right, to matters that happen in the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So the best source is the Quran and the Hadith of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and all of this has been collected by our scholars in books of Sirah. And so you go for classes and they will explain to you the stories. And then about the question about the hypocrites, right? So she said that, well, in the time of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the hypocrites were known to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam by name, but he only ever interacted with people with what they showed on the outward. And that is something that we must learn. You only judge people, or you only interact with people with what they show on the outward. And what they hold inside of themselves that is not for you to look into is none of your business, right? So you only interact with people with what they show on the outward. So if they show goodness, if they show iman on the outward, that is how you interact with them. And that's how we deal with them. And that's the answer that she gave just now with regards to the munafiqun. Then she said that, mashallah, just to add on, with regards to teaching the seerah, and using the technology of our zaman, right? Because we live in a zaman where we have this kind of new inventions, these new technologies. Right? So use these technologies in our zaman to bring the seerah to life to our children. So for example, it is Rabiul Awal is coming. Every day you should have some talk with your children, about the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You should have every day an amount, whereby you speak to them about Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? And make it fun. So after you speak about it, okay, let's, she'll say, let's look at our emoticons, look at our like stickers or emoticons on the phone or on the iPad. Okay, who can pick for me an emoticon, right, that has to do with the birth of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? So are the emoticons that show shooting stars, because there was a bright star, right? They happened like on the birth of Rasulullah, or is it an emoticon of an idol? I think that I've seen one, an emoticon like looks like an idol, right? And then or a castle to show how the arcs, of the Roman Empire were cracked, or a fire, right, to show that the fire of his restaurants were put out, right, at the birth of Rasulullah. So in a sense, you can look into the emoticons, so you can make drawings, you can do images, you can draw, you can use the ways or use the technology of our zaman, make it fun, bring it to life, right, for the children. Right, every time you go to a part of the seerah that you go through every day, right, make it into something that is lively, something, use the technology. The kids, the other kids of the zaman that use the technology if you want, right, to make it fun for them. They like it. Right, they draw on my iPad all the time, or they draw on my tab all the time. My nephews and my nieces, they just like it. I don't know why it beats paper, but they like it. Right, but in a sense, in a way, okay, right. So I know there are a few more questions here, and they're very good questions. So can we save these questions, inshallah, for the next lesson? I will ask in the next lesson, inshallah. So Karpreji, your question is a very good question, actually. And the last question about Dalail, yes, the Dalail are the proofs of Prophet. Yes, it is. Okay, so inshallah next week we'll continue. Inshallah naktafi huna, inshallah, Ustazah.